The day before Thanksgiving in 1971, a man identifying himself as Dan Cooper bought a plane ticket from Portland to Seattle. He hijacked the plane, claiming he had a bomb in his briefcase, and demanded $200,000 and 4 parachutes. He jumped out of the plane with the money and the bomb somewhere over the Pacific Northwest, never to be seen again. The FBI claims to have investigated over 1,000 people, including dozens of deathbed confessions. In 2016, 45 years after the hijacking, the FBI suspended its investigation of the case. While the FBI is no longer looking for DB Cooper, there is a community of people who are trying to solve the case on their own. Welcome to the Cooper Vortex. In this episode, we are lucky to be joined by a man of many talents. He has a bachelor's degree in business from Cal Poly, a master's from Golden Gate, and a bachelor's in biohealth science from Oregon State. He spent 4 years in the military working on C-130 electronics, used the Panama Papers to track down America's most wanted terrorist and mafia member. He also has a new book out, The Trail to DB Cooper, available now. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, James Lane. All right, James, when was the first time you heard about DB Cooper?
Oh, geez. So kind of spoiler alert for the book, but the first time I heard of DB Cooper was actually from my brother saying, I think our dad was DB Cooper.
And you didn't know what that name meant at all at that time?
No, I didn't. It definitely apparently somehow slipped my radar.
And what year was this?
Ah, geez. It was probably 2017, I'd like to say.
And what were your thoughts on that from your brother at that point in time?
I thought it was ridiculous, but when you said the drop point could have been near Lake Merwin, I remembered visiting there as a child with my father, and his life was already kind of a mystery to me, so it was intriguing. I was like, okay, that's a familiar area. That's interesting. But that's about as far as I went with it, and I Googled a little bit, Wikipedia, and I was like, okay, that's kind of an interesting character. Jumps out of a plane with all this money.
But you didn't pay much attention to it at that point in time.
No, I was like, uh, kind of dismissed it.
And then when did you pick that back up? When did that cross your mind again? Oh yeah, my brother said my dad could have been DB Cooper.
So I probably brought it up a couple times in conversation, like just, joking around. And it was really, I was kind of busy while I was in the military. When I got out was actually when I kind of like, you know what? I think I'm going to order my dad's military paperwork. And, his life was a mystery to me. So I was like, maybe I can learn some more about him. And maybe there is something to this DB Cooper thing. Let me see what I can dig up.
So at that point you started doing your own research on pulling together your dad's past and what does or doesn't align with the Cooper case.
Exactly. Yeah, like descriptions and locations and that sort of thing. And then I asked my brother, like, well, was he even in the area, during the time? Like the typical questions. And my brother was like, yeah, he was in the area for elk hunting season. It's like, okay.
What made your brother come to this conclusion?
So I think he knows a lot more than he's telling me. He sort of hints at, I think there might have been a confession and like that he wasn't too proud of it, or but it was very closed-lipped kind of thing. But I keep trying to get him, I actually try to get him to say something before the podcast, and he won't say anything over the phone. So he wants to talk in person. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll have to save that cliffhanger for another time when I can talk to him in person.
He won't tell you over the phone.
Yeah, no, he's definitely paranoid about it. Yeah. So
Is he the kind of person that would be paranoid about things?
yes, definitely. You could probably call him, you could probably diagnose him paranoid personality disorder. Which is another thing, which if you think about DB Cooper, and I think Tina kept saying that he was getting suspicious and that kind of thing. So there may be a little bit of paranoia in the family.
But he fully believes that your dad was DB Cooper.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like he brags about it.
What was his thought on you doing this podcast?
He didn't reply to my text, so he's probably just busy fishing or something like that. He's an avid fly fisherman and outdoorsman, so um, yeah, I didn't get a chance to really talk to him about it.
So you're bringing out all the dirty laundry on the family, and he's not aware yet at this point.
Yeah, no, I said I'm going on a DB Cooper podcast tonight. What should I say? And he didn't reply. I was like, did our dad ever admit to being DB Cooper? I plead the fifth. That's what he said.
That's interesting. But what when you started doing your research, was part of you thinking I'm gonna prove him wrong? It obviously wasn't my dad, or did you go into it thinking I'm gonna prove it was my dad?
Well, I kind of started off with, after really thinking about it a lot, I came up with this theory. I call it the statistics theory. And basically, I looked up the population of Woodland and I found that there was only about 1,600 people in Woodland at the time. And I'm like, that's not a lot of people. And, with all these descriptions of what DB Cooper did, it really sounded like he had piloting experience. So I'm like, well, that's only 1% of the population. So if you think that he landed in Woodland in an area that he knew well, then you can kind of start there and then think, well, 1% is going to be about 16 suspects. And then if you go further than that, you're like, well, it also seemed like maybe he had some military experience with like parachuting or something, Vietnam or whatever. And that gives you another 1%. So that leaves you down to one suspect. And I'm like, okay, well, that's compelling that if that's the description of DB Cooper, a pilot who had military experience that was from Woodland, then yeah, that makes my dad a pretty good suspect without eye color and height and all the other stuff that you got to think about and skin tone and that sort of thing. But
And your
then
dad had military experience.
yeah.
What did he do in the military?
So according to the military medical records, he was actually a Marine pilot and they called him NAVCADs at the time. And so that's kind of where the book starts off is as a NAVCAD. And that was kind of like the trail to DB Cooper was me sort of discovering who my father was and and creating stories about what his military experience might have been based on the military records. But yeah, so he did that, and then he was also in the Coast Guard in Port Angeles when he was discharged in 1969. So 2 years before the heist, and that was 14 years after 14 years of service. So they cut him 6 years short of his retirement.
Because of a scuffle on an icebreaker.
Yeah, that was the story. Spoiler alert.
So did you make contact with any people that knew your dad during this time period?
I tried to ask my sister. She kind of had some paperwork. She had this clip-on tie that I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I was like, are you guys messing with me? Is this like, or does everybody know but me? I'm the little young one. And then I found his bank statements from Ketchikan, Alaska, and I found that 1971 and 1972 records were missing. And in 1973, he made that $3,100 deposit, which in 1973 compared to today is worth about $21,000 if you look it up on Google. So I'm like, where did that money come from? 1973. He was obviously only making about $300 every 2 weeks. I'm probably doing some sort of currying of people in an airplane or something like that. Or I think he didn't start flying float planes till he moved to Bethel, Alaska. But in Ketchikan, I think he flew a Grumman goose or something like that, according to my older brother. My older brother's got more of the details, but like I said, he's kind of paranoid about talking about it.
Why do you think there's paranoia in the family about talking about this?
I think partially it's genetic, but yeah, I don't know. I think the more I dug into who DB Cooper was, I was like, the more I became convinced that wow, it really is him. Like the tan complexion, and then I got kind of thrown off. I was like, because Larry Carr was like, he's 6 foot tall, I'm like, but everyone wants DB Cooper to be a little bit closer to who they are, calm and collected, or 6 foot tall, or whoever whatever you relate to, drinking bourbon and 7 Up or something like that, is kind of cool. How can you relate to DB Cooper in his famous heist? But yeah, I don't know. He was 5'10", so he wasn't 6 foot tall, but
How
at the
old
same
was he in
time,
1971?
and then the age thing, he would have been 36. But if you look at the photo in the book, he looks closer to 40. And having flown as a Marine since his 20s, I think that probably aged him and alcohol and cigarettes. So the other thing was he was wearing sunglasses. And so how did they get his eye color if he was wearing sunglasses the whole time?
Well, one stewardess, when he passed the note off, she took a look at him, and then after he passed the note, he put his sunglasses on.
Okay. I find that kind of hard to believe that he would take his sunglasses off and then put them back on. But I don't know. My father had hazel eyes, so they're close to brown. But I figured he would have worn the sunglasses to hide them because hazel and green eyes are actually very rare. And you wouldn't want people to know that you had hazel and green eyes, so you'd wear sunglasses. But if you just had brown eyes, there's no point in wearing the sunglasses.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one theory. Um, But again, back to the statistics one, you kind of fit the pieces together. Well, he looked older than he was. Plus, you got a lot of egos involved. You got like, hey, well, if a guy who's 5'10", 160 held you guys up, like what? You couldn't tackle him or couldn't do something about it, If he's 6 foot tall, maybe you're like, okay, well, maybe he can defend himself or something. I don't know, but that's one thing. And then the age, of course, like he knew so much about the airplane. They're like, oh God, he's got to be in his mid 40s to know all this stuff. But yeah, so I don't know. I've heard of other suspects that were only in their 20s. And I'm like, yeah, you kind of rule them out. Another suspect that's like 5'8", you're like, oh, he's got a badass career and he kind of looks like my dad, but I don't know, that's too short. But coming down to the like, if you think that it's a pilot with military experience, that dropped into his backyard so he could get home for Thanksgiving, then it's a compelling story. And the tan skin, I don't think that, I don't know what percentage that breaks it down to, but I think 5'10" with the olive complexion and the hairdo, there's a lot of similarities.
And he was living in Woodland at the time.
So actually, he was living in Ketchikan, Alaska, and the photo that I provide in the book was about 5 months before the heist.
The
So he
cutting the
just
cake
actually,
photo.
yeah, he just recently got married, which is like, well, are you going to do that after you get married? I don't know. I guess if you're broke. But I found another piece of paper in 1971 that he had like these car expenses and he burnt it. He was so upset that he burnt the bill. But my brother was convinced that he was kind of angry at Northwest Orient for not paying for his flight for the interview. But I think more so he'd be angry about losing his military pension, and that would, and I did find his Bahamas. He went to the Bahamas, which I think one DB Cooper note to the FBI or something was like taunting them and talking about Uncle Sam and in the Bahamas or something. I don't know if you know any details about that.
There is one of the notes, I believe, that mentions the Bahamas.
Yeah, so that's interesting as well. There's just a lot of coincidences, and I don't necessarily believe in too many coincidences.
Do you think he had a real bomb?
I hope not. He did have a degree in chemistry, so he would have known how to make it look real. But I don't know. I would, yeah. I would think not, because I would think that he would like at the end of it, he was like, "Oh, I was just pulling a prank," if he didn't get away with it, and hope for a lesser sentence.
Well, it's kind of too late to say, ha ha ha, it was just a joke.
Yeah, right. I don't know what do you get? 20 years for joking about hijacking?
I don't know. I'm not willing to try it.
Yeah, definitely not. No, that was on a whole level of crazy.
One of the things I thought was really interesting about your book is that you brought up like he sent a piece of uranium.
Oh yeah. So I don't know if this is a spoiler alert about I don't know if Eric Ulysses has released this information yet or not, but apparently there's new data from the tie.
Yeah, that Tom K discussed at CooperCon.
Oh, did he discuss that uranium was on there?
Yes.
Oh, he did say that. Okay, I didn't know about that. But yeah, so that was I found in Bethel, Alaska, a missing. I was trying to see, looking for the treasure, right? Did he leave me anything? So I look in Bethel and missing or unclaimed property, and I find a PO box that had his name and some stuff in it, and it was 200 shares of Midnight Mines. Something like 200 shares, well, $200,000 what he stole. Another coincidence. And Midnight Mines, I'm like, what's the significance of Midnight Mines? I didn't really get it, but I looked it up, and apparently it's a uranium mine, and there's also elk hunting in the area. So I just figured it'd be a compelling story to throw uranium in there and have the elk hunting, like going out there for elk hunting. So yeah, I didn't actually know about the uranium on the tie, but someone was trying to tell me that, oh, that's pretty common, but I don't know how common really that is.
I doubt I have a bunch of uranium on my clothes.
Yeah. No, yeah, I did notice there's a water system in Cottonwood, California that has just traces of uranium in the water, which I don't think I'd want to drink that water, to be honest.
So what was his connection to this Midnight Mines thing?
So he had 200 shares of Midnight Mines, and I don't know if he just thought he was gonna make a lot of money off it or something, but basically it's just a cleanup project. So if anything, you might be liable for cleaning up the uranium mine.
Are they still in business?
I think they went out of business. Yeah.
Dang, so you're not going to get rich off that.
Yeah, no, just a lump of coal that I received pretty much.
But
But
your dad wore clip-on ties.
apparently, yeah, they left one for me to find. So it's kind of fun.
Why do you think this case is still unsolved?
For one, I think the discrepancies, there's like, was he 5'10"? Was he 6 foot tall? The eye color, um, just the age. So if it really was my father, then they got the age wrong and they got the eye color wrong. And basically, anytime anyone could even joke about it, he'd be like, "No, DB Cooper had brown eyes," or "No, DB Cooper was 6 foot tall," or "No, DB Cooper,
Well,
was in
5'10" and
his mid
hazel
40s."
eyes, I'm not dismissing someone based on that, or even 36 years old. If you told me he
Yeah,
was 26 years old, I'm not listening.
yeah, definitely. That's a tough one.
But 36 would be on the younger end of what I would imagine him to be. And can you confuse brown and hazel in an airplane? Absolutely. And
Yeah,
5'10" is within the range. I mean, it always says 5'10" to 6 feet tall.
yeah, definitely. It is. It's compelling. It's interesting. So now I just have to get more information from my brother.
If you had to bet your rent money right now, is your dad DB Cooper? Where are you putting your money?
Um, yeah, with everything that I've seen, I bet the rent money on it.
Really?
I don't know if I'd bet my house on it, but I'd bet the rent money for sure. Just if he actually survived the fall, and then of course the buried money, I think that was another interesting, compelling thing that was kind of part of this whole mystery of my father's life. But when my grandmother passed away, I went to my Uncle Bill's house, and he was really close with my father. He's actually my father's wife's brother. And he showed me this huge toolbox. And inside the toolbox was my father's tools, like a shovel and stuff. And above the toolbox was this giant aerial map of Woodland, Washington. And apparently my grandfather was a surveyor of Woodland and did the first survey of Woodland, Washington. And of course, like my grandma came over from Finland on a boat, and so they settled in Woodland, Washington, and knew all the whole town. I think a small town, they kind of all knew each other.
I lived in Woodland.
But okay, awesome. Yeah, that's where my older brother is now, right now. Just
That's what sort of got me sucked into this DB Cooper thing is living in Woodland.
okay, so you got to be kind of a Woodland fan then. A, a DB Cooper from Woodland.
Yeah, I lived there from about 2000, 2006 to 2014.
Okay, it's a long time.
It's a cool town. I love Woodland.
Yeah, I remember enjoying visiting there and going to Mount St. Helens and stuff. And I like going the garden, and we'd get worms for fishing and get jams for my Nanner's jam.
Because you didn't
I
you
miss
didn't
that.
live with your dad growing up.
No, yeah, my parents split up when I was 2 in Bethel, and my mom moved to Anchorage. So I grew up kind of the Huckleberry Finn lifestyle in Anchorage with my fishing pole and my dog, and my buddies and I would go fish Campbell Creek in Anchorage and come home with a trash bag full of salmon and do smoked salmon and stuff. But I visited Woodland a couple times.
How much time did you spend with your dad growing up?
Oh geez, I probably could count on my hand how many visits. Maybe only a few visits after age 2. And then he actually passed away in 92 when I was about 8 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, died
What
of a
did
heart attack.
heart attack? Okay. And how old was he in 92?
Let's see, he was born in 35. So 35, 45, 55,
So,
50, 57 or 50 something.
man, that's young to die of a heart attack.
Yeah, we can go conspiracy theory on that one, right? They knew he was DB Cooper. They gave him a heart attack.
They used the heart attack gun.
Yeah.
What is your theory on the Tina Bar money?
I definitely think it was buried. So I think the parachute was also buried. And if I had to guess, I'm like, it'd be kind of cool if he left some sort of clue, but I was thinking where he retired was back in Woodland, so he moved back to Woodland to retire. And I was thinking it'd be cool if his coordinates had something to do with where he moved and where he buried the parachute. So someday I'd like to go on a treasure hunt and like, okay, maybe Lake Merwin is um, my north count, and then where he lived would be west, and somewhere in between there, it would be a buried parachute that you'll never find. But
When did you decide to write this book? Which I've got right here, by the way.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Very nice. Um, Actually, I think back when I found the military paperwork and I was kind of convinced, I wrote some of it way back then, back in 2019 when I was honorably discharged from the military. And then so right now I'm in a counseling program, a master's degree in counseling. And so we got literally a month off of school. And I was like, I am so bored. You know what? I'm gonna write my DB Cooper story. I don't have time to write a novel, but it's a cute short story, and try to keep the audience interested. And so yeah, I wrote it in a few weeks.
Yeah, it was a good book. Easy read. It's only like 50 pages long or something like that. So,
Yeah, right. But yeah, glad you enjoyed it.
do you plan to follow it up and continue this story? Continue to chase this?
It's tough. It's tough. It'd be probably the adventures of DB Cooper. But my older brother's the one with all the stories, and to get him to sit still and tell them is kind of difficult. He likes to tell us one story where he actually met Christian Brando, Marlon Brando's son,
Hmm.
in Bethel, Alaska. And I kind of tried to fact check that one, and I did find out that Christian Brando did actually move out to Bethel, Alaska. And so he became really good friends with my brother Mike. And this is a rated R comment, but my brother likes to say his book's going to start with, "Don't fuck her, Mike. She's got the clap." That's his story. The Christian Brando told him that. They had to fight over girls and stuff. But yeah, my older brother's an interesting character.
How much older is he than you?
He's actually in his 60s, so he's old enough to, I think, know something.
So he had a completely different dad than you, even though it was the same guy.
Pretty much. He got to know him a lot better than me. Yeah.
Hmm. Do you think that your dad confessed to him?
That's a good question because I don't know, because he's got kind of a big mouth. He likes to brag about stuff. But I think if, he trusted him enough, like, I think it's a possibility. But it's also possible that he didn't say a word and he really kept it quiet. A lot of people find that so hard to believe, but some of the stuff I wrote in the book, I've kept quiet for years, didn't tell anyone, and I was paranoid about it. So I was like, is this coincidence or did this really happen?
Well, why the paranoia? I don't understand that. It's not like you're gonna come out and say, "Oh yeah, it was my dad," and now the FBI is gonna break down your door and take you to jail. You didn't have any
Yeah,
part of this. Your brother didn't have any part of this.
no, not in my case. Like, yeah, I would confess because I've got nothing to lose, but maybe get some more book sales.
Even if your dad confessed to him inside the statute of limitations, as an accomplice, that's all long gone. Even if your brother at 6 years old was the getaway driver, that the statute of limitations on that is long gone. The only person that could be potentially facing criminal charges is DB Cooper himself because they
Yeah.
issued a John Doe indictment. So he was convicted. We just don't know his name yet.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, couldn't he still get like accomplice charges or something like that?
No,
Or
the statute of limitations on that is long gone.
wow.
Plus, I think the FBI would be happy to know what happened, even from an accomplice at this point in time.
Should I get him on the phone right now and see if he'll say something?
It's kind of cold to call someone and be like, "Hey, by the way, you're on a podcast."
Yeah, right. Okay. We'll save that for another time.
But hit him up, ask him if he wants to do this show also, and maybe
Yeah, for
he's got
sure.
something to say.
Yeah, he's got a lot of interesting stories.
Because I'm interested in this. I feel like it's not pushed far enough. I feel like you have a lot more work to do, James.
Yeah, yeah. Trying to pry more information out of my older brother. That's he's given me like bits and pieces and like hints at stuff, and I was like, wait, did he just say that? Did he just say that he confessed to him when he was in his older years? But yeah, I got to talk to him in person and get really the whole story.
Yeah, we'll get to work on this, James. I want to know what happened.
I know, right? Well, I think he bought a float plane afterwards, which he had a nice float plane and was flying people in Beth, Alaska. Remember one story was like his plane went down. I think he was by himself. His plane went down in Bethel, Alaska, and my mom used to love to tell the story, and she just said that he was gone for a whole week. They finally found him, and one of their buddies was like, "Let's have a Fred's not dead party." But yeah, he's got all the fun stories that we just haven't sat down. I've been so busy, honestly, with school and everything that I haven't had a good heart to heart and talk about some DB Cooper stories.
How could you be putting DB Cooper aside? I don't even get that. I don't understand.
I know, putting the pieces together with the military medical records was the best I could do, but I probably could have put some more due diligence into prying for information. But it was like, I don't know why it's so difficult to get information out of him. For one, he just changes subjects so quickly because I think he has ADHD. But yeah, he just kind of gives like a little bit here and there, a little bit of information.
Well, James, your book is The Trail to DB Cooper, and when are we gonna expect a follow-up?
I was gonna see how the sales go, if I get a decent little profit every month, then it might be worth it to the adventures of DB Cooper. Like it did take a lot of effort, a lot of research into like figuring out the lingo and some historical fiction to put in there. Um, so yeah, I gotta get down to visit my brother and start taking notes because I forget. I hear he tells me these stories and then I forget. So
All right, well, get after it, James. I look forward to it when you are proud to tell me that you've solved this case,
Oh yeah,
and we
no,
can
maybe you guys will
expect your
do it.
follow-up book.
You get the DNA and check to see if there's matching DNA. If they could do that, that'd be awesome.
Well, I can promise you that just on the release of your book, there are people quietly researching your father.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it was kind of cool. I was on Facebook and who was it? Nicholas. Nicholas?
Yeah, Nicholas
Yeah,
Broughton.
he started sending me information on my dad. He's like,
Nikki's a great
here's a
guy.
DUI that you're probably not proud of. No, I don't
Oh, a
drink and
guy in
drive.
Alaska got a DUI? That's shocking.
Yeah, no,
Crazy.
he liked his bourbon, that's for sure. But he's also a Scotch drinker. My mom used to tell me, like, don't drown a good Scotch. Just like drink Scotch on the rocks. That's also why I was like, I think he probably would have ordered a bourbon on the rocks, but if he's trying to disguise his identity, it's like, I'll throw 7 Up on there too.
Yeah, I'll water it down a little bit today.
Smoke the wrong cigarettes, wear sunglasses to hide my eyes, and yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, it's compelling though, for sure.
Well, James, is there anything I didn't ask you?
No, I think that was pretty good.
All right. Well, again, the book, The Trail to DB Cooper, you pick it up on Amazon, or is there anywhere else you're sending people to get the book?
Just Amazon for now.
It's probably the best place to buy a book.
Yeah, pretty easy.
All right. Well, thanks for doing the show, James. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. It was great being here.
Go pick up a copy of James' new book, The Trail to DB Cooper. I've got links to it right in the show notes. Did your grandpa tell you he was DB Cooper's getaway driver? Do you know what was in the mystery bag? Questions, comments, hit us up. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter, or you can email us directly, dbcooperpodcast@gmail.com. Links to that in the show notes. Thank you to James Lane for adding to my book collection. Thank you to Russell Colbert for adding to my podcast collection. Only a few more episodes before we get you on the show, bro. Thank you to Darren Osadich for letting us play his music. I'm Darren Schaefer, and thank you for listening to the Cooper Vortex.
Here's a story we all know about a man many years ago. Hijacked a plane, so we were told. Then he jumped into the cold. A glass of bourbon and a cigarette. He's in the air, the stage is set. Polite and kind, the people say it's time to make his getaway. This is how the story goes about the money and the man. D.B. Cooper, they call me now. Catch me if you can. Rolled up in his coat real tight. He's got enough to change his life. Where he landed, no one knows. But from his tale, a legend grows. Was a cold, dark, rainy night. As he walked, he saw light. Held his cash close to his side. He just needs to catch a ride. This is how the story goes about the money and the man. D.B. Cooper, they call me now. Catch me if you can. to the bone. Look for a place to use the phone. Little cafe outside of town. He walked in, he just sat down. Met a man with a cowboy hat who told a friend right where he's at. Into the night he disappeared, and from that night a legend reared. This is how the story goes about the money and the man. D.B. Cooper, they call me now. Catch me if you can. 40 years, the secret's out. The story has been told. D.B. Cooper's done running now. He was 80